Hi guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. My name is Ash, you'll know me as Brommer18, and today I've got another custom tactics tutorial video for you. We've already done 3 so far. I've talked about possession based tactics, how to make one of them, a counter-attacking tactic and a pressing tactic as well. Really my 4th and final video of this series is how to make a defensive tactic. Now, before we do get into it, I want to talk to you about what I'm going to do in this video. First things first, I'm going to take you through what are the best formations to use and what are the ones to avoid. I'm also going to talk to you about the tactics themselves and what you should really go for when trying to make a defensive tactic, and also player instructions as well, which ones you should really opt for. Before we do get into it, if you haven't done so already, 1, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so that you get notifications every time I upload a video, and also go and check out my Patreon. The link to that is in the description down below, as well as the comment section. You can get access to a whole range of great perks, including my FIFA 22 custom tactics package, where I give deep dive breakdowns of every tactic that I do cover on the channel. I do cover real live tactics and replicate them in game. Also do lots of exclusive tactics videos, so for like my player scouting board with detailed scout reports on real players, whole range of stuff, Discord server access, giveaways, everything. So do go and check that out, and I really will appreciate it. Now onto the video today. So what is a defensive tactic? You know, what is the role of these? Why should you be looking to do one, or why should there be an option? Well, it's really about, first things first, you want to stop conceding so much. That's very important, but also it's more about, rather than being that team who are threatening on the counter-attack, it's more about trying to steal a goal. Can we nick a goal? Can we steal a goal? Can we keep a clean sheet? Get those 1-0 victories. That's what you're really looking for. So that's what we're trying to get at with a defensive tactic today. Now, obviously, it is extremely hard to defend on FIFA, and even if you've got these tactics, it's still no guarantee, because defending is just an absolute nightmare. However, these sort of tips that I'm going to give you for these tactics and formations will hopefully make the process easier for you and stop you from conceding so many goals. Right then, first things first, I've chosen Atletico Madrid. Obviously in recent years they've become more of a possession based team, a little bit more attacking, but I've really gone for them because obviously we know Diego Simeone he's the godfather of defending, really. You know, if you want that team who is just absolutely robust, resolute in the defensive phase of the game, he is your man, and they've got the personnel for it as well. Right then, so let's talk about the formations first. What are you looking for in the formations, and what should you avoid? Well, you are looking for systems with defensive midfielders. That is extremely important, the most important thing in these systems. The formations, any formations that have 1 but probably 2 defensive midfielders. Now, why you want that ahead of something, so say for example, let's say you've got a 4-4-2 here. You've got the 4-4-2 flat, and then you've also got the 4-4-2 holding. Why is holding better than flat? Well, what you find is that when you're defending on FIFA, defensive midfielders are going to help your centre-backs more. Compared to central midfielders, you're going to find bigger gaps in between them, and that is not what you want. That is a big no-no in the defensive books. You're going to find too much space for the opposition to play in those advanced areas. You don't want them picking up the ball in those areas, so you want to try and lock them off as much as you can. So defensive midfielders are absolutely vital to any defensive tactic. Also, what you're looking for is wingers, and the reason being is that with wingers, compared to central midfielders, you can actually set them to track back in the instructions, which is what we'll talk about, so you can get them tracking back and defending more. Also though, why it's better compared to, say, like, you know, a 5-3-2 system, for instance, if we have a look here, is if you're playing against a team, particularly if you're playing like online seasons or something, they're going to be able to double up on you on the wings, because they might have the winger and they'll also have the fullback maybe overlapping, and they're going to find a lot of joy in those areas. Whereas, you know, if you want to try and drag a central midfielder out, that's not really advised. You'd prefer not to if possible. So if you're going to be inviting pressure onto you a lot with these defensive tactics, you know, you're really going to want wingers to make sure that you've got that double up locked down each side. What's also important playing into that is that you cover all areas. You want all areas marked. So again, with the likes of wingers not being on the pitch, you're missing those areas. You want something, so say for example in the 5-4-1, all the areas are covered. In a 4-2-3-1, again, if we can find it here somewhere along the line, 4-2-3-1 wide, you know, all the areas are covered. Something like, you know, if we find it like a narrow diamond, things like that, you know, the 4-4-2 flat, even the 4-2-2, because they're obviously all cams. you know, those sort of things, 4-3-1-2, avoid them because they're not covering all areas. You want to make sure zonally you've got every area on lockdown and you've got players in those positions. So again, just something to look out for. In terms of the formations that I would personally use, the two I've really honed in on. One of them is the 5-4-1. However, what you will notice is, of course, the CMs, well, they're CMs in this. So what you want to do here is you would actually want to change these to defensive midfielders. And that would be very, very important, just to make sure you've got that. Even though you've got 3 centre-backs, you still want to lock off that space ahead of them. Make sure you're protecting them. So you would want to drop these back to defensive midfield. So that is one of the 2 systems, providing you do that. Or the other formation, which is probably actually my favourite, my #1 pick, is the 4-2-3-1 wide. Because it allows you, obviously, to have 2 defensive midfielders. You've got wingers tracking back. You've still got a little impetus on the attack because you've got the cam and the striker. And also, to make up for the fact that you've not got 3 centre-backs like you do in the 5-4-1, you can actually get one of the full-backs to like stay back and play more of an inverted type centre-back, something that we see a Jose Mourinho system. We see that an awful lot. That's very important that he forms a back 3 and one of the full-backs will step in and bed in with his centre-backs. So that's what it allows you to do. And it's very, very versatile. So with you know, in terms of the formations, the 5-4-1, providing you move the centre midfielders back, and the 4-2-3-1 wide are without a doubt my favourite. One more thing I would talk about here, if you are using systems, let's say it's something like a 4-3-3. We've got the holding one here, we've also got the defend one here. The best thing to do is actually move the wingers back to left and right midfield, and the reason why is just so they're in deeper positions, just to try and protect from any opposition counter-attack, get them in more defensive areas, not make them quite so aggressive. That's what you're looking for. You want to make sure you've got as much protection as possible. So in any system where you've got wingers instead of wide midfielders, just change them back to wide midfielders. That's another important thing. So then, what about the tactics? Well, first things first, let's talk defensively. Defensive style, it would have to be drop back. Now, even though on these two, press after possession loss and press after heavy touch, you could still have that defensive foundation and that sort of low block. You know, you don't really want to be committing too much players if you can avoid it. So I'd say always really go for drop back. If you're then pushing for a goal, things can change. You know, you can then start going pressing, but you know, in the immediate run, what you're looking for is just drop back. Make sure you've got everyone bedding back in and protecting your team as much as possible. The defensive width should always be narrow. I always talk about this in my tactics videos. It's extremely important. Be compact. Don't let them play through you. Force them around. I do get some people, and they have commented on my videos before, saying, you know, the opposition are finding so much space out wide. You know, this is a problem. Why are we going so narrow? But that's the point. Like, they can't hurt you from out wide. At some point, that ball has got to come into the centre, and that is what the best defensive teams do. Make it compact. Lower, you know, cut out any gaps in the central areas of the pitch. You've got to force them out wide, and all of a sudden, you know, it does become a harder task. So anything below 30 is what you're looking for to make sure it is a narrow system. I actually go with 28 just because it might give you the opportunity, because you're a tiny bit wider compared to if it was like 10 or 1. It might give you an opportunity if the opposition tried to switch the play. You may have a defender able to like intercept the ball, and all of a sudden you can win it. So it just does give you a little bit leeway. That's why I actually go for something round about 20 plus. In this case, we went for 28 compared to if it was 1, but just make sure it is narrow. The depth, again, obviously you're looking for a low block, so anything below 30. I mean, really, I imagine a lot of you would probably go for something really low, like 10 and stuff. I just go for 20, just to give me, again, a little bit of attacking impetus. You know, I wouldn't like to be all out defensive all the time. But again, anything below 30, it's what you feel comfortable with. Ultimately, if you still feel like you want more protection, you want to be more solid, go for something less. Absolutely no problem at all. Just make sure it is a low block. And so obviously that's 29 and below. So what about going forward? Well, there are things that you can do offensively that will help you create that defensive tactic, and it will play into your system. One is build-up play. You are either looking for fast build-up or long ball. And why that is because it's going to help you to form counter-attacks. You know, if you're going to play a defensive system, obviously you're not going to be able to retain the ball. It's going to be a bit harder because you're going to be on a low block. The opposition are going to be in prime position to press you. Plus, your defence is already low anyway. You're not looking to press and regain the ball instantly, so it's not going to be a possession system. So how are you going to be able to attack? Where you're going to want to try and hit teams on the break or try and form patterns of play that are going to enable you, to counter on them in ways that will exploit them. And exploit the spaces they leave. So you're looking for either long ball or fast build up. I personally prefer long ball, just because it's going to enable you to get it up to a forward. He can maybe hold it up for you and then get runners in from there. Same with chance creation as well. Not looking for the likes of forward runs and possession. For the reasons that I just spoke about, we're looking for more direct passing. Again, it's going to cover more ground. Players are going to show for it further at the pitch. That is what you're looking for, particularly the striker. You want to try and cover as much ground as possible in a quicker amount of time. And that is really what the best defensive teams are going to try and do. In terms of the width, you're looking for anything that's below 70. And the reason being is that obviously 70 and above is a wide system, and why you want something below that is because naturally, because you're going to be playing so compact and so deep, you want to make sure that your players aren't too stretched in order to get back. You don't want the opposition to be able to exploit the gaps quickly whilst your players are still out wide, so you want something a bit more compact even when going forward. The width should hopefully be created by the wingers and the wide midfielders that you do play. So you're looking for something that's below 70. You can go for whichever one you prefer, really. I guess the best thing to do would be to fit it into your system. You could probably go a bit wide if you have 3 in midfield. If you have 2, maybe you want to go a bit more compact and support them as much as possible. With players in the box, anything that's up to bar 6 and below, don't want to be committing too many players, again, because you want that protection. So 6 is going to give you 3 players running into the box in those crossing situations. And then anything below that as well will be less than that. So, I think 6 is a good number because it still gives you enough players in the box that you can make an impact and something can happen, compared to if it was down to 2 and you've only got 1 player in the box. That's completely pointless. So, anything like this, 6 in the box, well, 3 in the box, up to bar 6, is quite a nice balance. Now, with corners and free kicks, you actually want to boost these up to 4. Now, why is that? It's because these are going to be probably your biggest chance to score goals. That is what defensive teams do. That they make their impact by taking the set pieces. They're the most important part of scoring goals for them. And so you want to be the biggest threat as possible you can be from those situations. So in this case, you want these up to 4, get more players in the box, get your tall players in, your centre-backs into the box, and then you've got more options. Again, making sure that you've got a tall team and stuff like that are going to obviously help you in those set-piece situations. So that's just something to be mindful of as well. Next up, I want to talk to you guys about the player instructions. What are certain player instructions that you can do in order to help you and help your defensive tactic along, give you a bit more structure and protection in this instance? Well, with the goalkeeper, first things first, make sure he's on comes crosses. It's going to relieve the pressure so much off you in those crossing situations because they're quite protected on this game. And so when they're coming out for crosses, they can claim it fairly easily. Obviously, you want to bring them out as well. But things like that, that's really going to help you. It can relieve a lot of pressure and help you out in those situations. So make sure the goalie is on comes for crosses. Elsewhere, a good thing to do, particularly if you're playing this 4-2-3-1, we've already spoken about it, how one fullback goes and the other one stays. So that's, again, looking to do that. Make sure that if you've got one fullback overlapping, which is absolutely fine and probably advised, actually. So in this case, we'll put Lodi overlapping and joining the attack. In the other case, with Vasaico, you want him staying back, staying inverted as well, to make sure he beds into that 3. Now, let's say, for example, if you're playing the 5-back, the 5-4-1, you may actually decide to get both of these overlapping, which is absolutely fine and actually probably advised, because you're going to have 3 centre-backs and you're also going to have 2 defensive midfielders as well. So in that case, you could go for both. But if you're playing a 4-back, I would advise that you have one fullback going on and overlapping and the other one staying back and bedding a back 3. It's also important to have the defensive midfielders on cut passing lanes, and the reason being is that man mark is quite broken on this game, in all honesty. Doesn't quite work. You tend to find a lot of opposition midfielders still coming into the box unmarked, which is really frustrating. So what you want to try and do is cut them off at the source, and to do that you're looking for cut passing lanes. It's going to help you, whereas when they're on man mark they don't do either, really, or not to great effect. So have both of these on cut passing lanes. Also, what I want to talk about is the wingers. Make sure that all of them are on comeback on defense, and the same as well with a cam. You know, you've got the option here to track back, get these guys tracking back regardless of their work rate, and that's very important. That's why I advise you guys, you know, you want systems with wingers and preferably the cam rather than the central midfielder, because you'll noticed earlier when we spoke about the 4-3-3 holding that obviously, or the 4-3-3 defend I should say, obviously this time's a central midfielder, and in that case you can't set him to track back, but in the 4-2-3-1, because it's a cam, you can then set them to track back, which is very, very handy. So again, it's going to help you and support you in those instances as much as possible. One final thing with regard to the DMs, keep them back. Just keep them back. Don't get them going forward if you're not needing to push for a goal. If I can actually get to it here. You know, there's not really any need. You don't want to be getting caught out in those central areas. You know, the attacking impetus should really come from in this system, the cam, the two wingers. You know, in a 5-4-1, you're looking for the wingers, the striker, and the wing backs as well, getting forward, and you can get the wingers cutting inside. The DMs are there to really be a possessional pivot and also just protect those central areas and stop the opposition playing through you. So you're not like them to commit if you're, you know, looking to defend and be, you know, defensively solid. So that's it for the instructions. Let me just quickly give you some tips as well for playing defensively. What are the best things that you can do in game in order to help you? Well, one, and this is what I talked about in the pressing tactic tutorial as well, is teammate contain. That is RB or R1 if you're using the classic controller scheme. However, I have remapped it so that it is now A or X if you're on PlayStation. And what that does is it gets a second teammate to actually close down the ball and just hold off. And it is absolutely vital. It is so handy, really helps you defensively, means you're not having to do everything all the time. You can go and track a runner or hold the space and another player will go to the ball. Really, really handy, massively advised. Next up, the important thing to do is not to be dragged out too far in any position. You know, don't go charging out all the time. Just hold your position, just retain your shape. Very important is to make sure that your team is retaining that shape, because everything is set up in the tactics so that you've got that nice defensive base and that shape. So you don't want anything that's going to disrupt that too much. And if you're going out charging out all over the place, you know, obviously that's going to affect that. So just make sure you're trying to retain your position, stop the opposition playing through you, force them to try and do something rather than them being able to capitalise on your mistake. Leading on from that, it's also important on the game, particularly when you're playing against the AI, is to try and force the opposition out wide and force them to cross the ball. Often what you find with the AI, and this is pretty much how they attack most of the time, is they'll try and take it to the wings and then cut inside and pass it along the face or the edge of the box and then get it into the central areas, and that's how they score most of their goals. You want to try and stop this. Try and force them to cross it in. Try and force them to take on your centre-backs in the air. You've got your goalkeeper coming out for crosses. Try and force them to do that, because they're not uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable doing it, and it's the same even if you're playing online as well. A lot of people don't like to cross the ball if they can help it, because, you know, crossing situations quite hard to form. The attacking movements and the runs and the physicality of the striker and the one-on-one battles are a little bit muddled at the moment and need a lot of work. So it means that crossing is not as ideal, particularly when you're in the more advanced area compared to early crosses. So try and force them to cross the ball and take on your centre backs, you know, and play to your strengths rather than them cutting inside and getting their chances that way. That's also very, very important. Now, it's easier said than done. I also try to do this, and sometimes even when I'm trying to jockey them and show them outside, they still find a way to get back inside. But you know, it's important to keep at that, because it can and will work. So then that just about rounds it off for this video then, guys. If you've enjoyed it, if you found it helpful, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so that you get notifications every time I upload. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. The link to that is down below. Lots of great perks and rewards on there, as I already spoke about. Really appreciate the support from all my lovely Patreons so far, and long may it continue. If you've got any questions about this whatsoever, just get at me in the comment section. I will get back to you if and when I can. Don't forget to check out the links in the description, such as my Twitter, give me a follow on there, and also my affiliate links where you can get access to all of my equipment and my gear and stuff. Gives the channel a little kickback, and it's a great way to support me without spending any more money than you were already going to. On that note, we're going to finish the video off there. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you soon.